What is up, beauts and viewers? My name is Kiss, and welcome back to KTV Network. Today I am reacting to We Need to Talk About Stop Killing Games. I don't know what's going on with this movement. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. I'm starting to think that games that are online and only available online are being taken down after after some time has passed, and gamers are not getting their money. That is my own assumption. I don't know what's happening. I've seen snippets here and there of certain companies against it, but let's see what this is, what Mr. Matty Plays has to say about this. Let's watch. If you're like me, welcome. I have no freaking clue what's going on. I just know people are mad.
It is Maddie here today. Hope you're all doing absolutely excellent and had a wonderful weekend. Today, I want to bring something to your attention if it's not already there, and that is the Stop Killing Games initiative. This is a European citizens initiative, and I'll get into why this is important for the games industry as a whole and why this is more
European
of a foot in the door than anything we've seen for consumer protection rights within video games in a while. But ladies and gentlemen, as I was doing my research over the weekend, one of my concerns with this whole situation is that a lot of the content covering it has become about drama and the individual pirate software who has served as a roadblock, as well as spreading misinformation about the subject matter, which absolutely should be talked about and reprimanded. And he had his fork in the road moment on Twitter, and he chose his path and earned his villain status as far as I'm concerned.
Wait, just talk to Charlie and Josh. If you're mad at me for being to Josh. What? The initiative calls to require publishers that sell or license video games to consumers in the European Union related features and assets sold for video games. They operate to leave video games in a functional. Exactly.
Sir, you have that moment as a creator. Spotlight's on you. Do you own it? Do you try to make things right, or do you go left? And he went left. But a lot of the content has been about it, and my worry is that with people getting involved in the drama, it's taking away from people who can actually learn about the Stop Killing Games initiative, what it actually means, and get some signatures down, because the lift to get involved and to help is extremely low. Like signing a digital form. The difference it can make, I hope to illustrate here as I break down the information, as well as an example involving Ubisoft on how this can be avoided. I'll have all the necessary links in the description down below for you to check.
I normally don't like signing things just because I feel like I'm a part of the crowd that can be targeted, and I don't like targeting myself. You know what I'm saying? But let me see. Stop Killing Game signatures.
Check out if you're around the EU area. You might want to consider signing. Ultimately, up to you. But again, I'll have that all linked in the description down below, alongside a long video.
1.3 million.
At the point that this really took off about a week ago, this was a cause that was having its last dying breaths. It just wasn't getting the signatures it needed. But now, because of content creators, it has a full head of steam behind it, and it just may cross the line. But as always, there's a timer, and time's ticking. We got a few weeks to go here. So I'm going to inform all of you on what's going on here if you have yet to catch up on it. If you're new here into what's going on with gaming, consider subscribing. All right, some quick background information here. First, the European Citizens Initiative. Stop destroying video games. What is the objective? This is really important because, again, not to make it about the individual here, but in the case of pirate software who is spreading misinformation, this is the part that seems to be getting overlooked by a lot of people. So what is the objective of this? The initiative calls to require publishers that sell or license video games to consumers in the European...
Wait, hang on. I think this is my... Window capture. It's supposed to be window capture, not display. Hello? No, we're not doing that.
European Union, or related features and assets sold for video games they operate, to leave said video games in a functional, playable state. Specifically, the initiative seeks to prevent the remote disabling of video games by the publishers before providing reasonable means to continue functioning of said video games without the involvement from the side of the publisher. The initiative does not seek to acquire ownership of said video games, associated intellectual rights, or monetization rights. Neither does it expect the publisher to provide resources for the said video game once they discontinue it, while leaving it in a reasonably functional, playable state. What this is not trying to do, as explicitly stated by the initiative, is require publishers to give up intellectual property rights, source code, or require endless support for, say, online live service titles. I say it this way because individuals such as Pirate Software have blatantly misrepresented what this initiative stands for, and have gone out of their way to call it shit, ass say I'm going out of my way to block this thing, like total Jim Ryan energy during the ABK merger. Like, I'm just here to block your merger. And like many have already addressed, and I'll just keep it brief, it's crazy because the things he's arguing against don't even exist, but it's damaged the campaign. Fortunately, it's gained a little bit of steam, but also some may be wondering, well, is this actually going to make a difference? And there's a good example in their frequently asked questions. They say, how's this campaign going to save video games? And at the bottom, they say an analogy to this process is how the ACCC in Australia forced Valve to offer refunds on Steam, so Valve ended up offering them to people worldwide as a result. It's that simple. Game goes offline, there's still some way for you or the community to access it. I'll get into my personal thoughts once I give you all of the information. Now, the importance of this European Citizens Initiative is that if you live in the EU and this gets to 1 million signatures by July 31st, that's the deadline. So as of the time of posting this, a month ago.
Yeah, we're already at 1.3.
When this was first starting to circulate, it was under halfway there. So it's gained a lot of steam over time, but given the millions of views that I've seen these videos gather, I'm a little surprised how few signatures in the scheme of things that this has received. I think, for example, Moist Critical making his video on the Stop Killing Games initiative, it has 3.5 million views. Like, that's insane numbers. And to see such a small bump in the scheme of things is a little startling and concerning, because this feels like, again, the foot in the door, because this isn't like a petition per se where it's like, oh, you know, we want this thing and we're just gathering attention. It's like, no, when it hits 1 million signatures, the EU has to take a look at it. It does not guarantee anything, but as I said at the start of this video, it is a foot
we're already
in the door.
there.
That is what this is all about. It's getting a foot in the door. Something.
And as we're watching this video, I'm gonna react to Asmongold as well and see what he says.
It may not go as we had hoped, but it gives people a chance. And as I start to illustrate an example when it comes to Ubisoft and the crew, it'll likely make more sense to you why you would want to sign this. Again, totally up to you, just spreading the information here. There's also a petition for the UK government and parliament, same thing, prohibit publishers irrevocably disabling...
I mean, it makes sense. You will own nothing and be happy. I just keep thinking about that, but... If you make us pay for it, at least leave it online. That seems like basic, I forget what that's called, between a customer and a seller, just
video games
etiquette,
they have
maybe?
already
I don't
sold.
know.
The government should update consumer laws to prohibit publishers from disabling video games and related game assets/features. They have already sold without
your
recourse.
lexicon is probably a lot more extensive than mine.
We seek this as a statutory consumer right, and
Most likely.
already almost halfway there. Now, the YouTuber who is putting this whole initiative together, Accursed Farms, did make a whole video talking about this for over an hour. Again, I'll have that link down below. But one thing that he highlights here is that the EULA in the games that you agree to, you know, when you start the game and you see like a bunch of legal mumbo jumbo, you're like, yes, agree, yeah, you got my life, whatever. I don't know what I just signed away, but I want to play my video game. So in there, you'll see examples like, for example, Ubisoft. You and Ubisoft or its licensors may terminate this EULA at any time for any reason. So vague kind of description, very much giving them the open door for something like, as I'll talk about.
Basic transactional protocol? I don't know. I feel like that's the word.
Later with the crew to kind of dip on the game. Or in the case of Blizzard here, for termination,
transactional etiquette. I don't know.
Right to terminate
Something like
this agreement at any time.
I'm just making up stuff here now.
No reason with you or without notice to you. Which that one's just diabolical. I mean, that's just when you read that, you're, okay, so you can just pull the plug whenever. You don't have to explain anything to me. No word of warning, no heads up. Again, we'll get into sort of what the nitty-gritty of what's being advocated for is. So when you look at the Council Directive 9313 EEC, not going to pretend I'm like Hoglaw out here and know my legal mumbo-jumbo. It is claimed EULAs like that are in violation of this directive because basically what happens is that it is containing unfair rights, unfair terms toward the consumer. There's not a balance between the company and the consumer. And that's effectively the case here. So yeah, this shouldn't come as too much of a surprise, but these AAA companies are scumbags, dude. And it's crazy to see just...
I think it just all comes down to power and control.
How blatant it is. But that's why, again, I wanted to bring attention to it, because links down...
They want to make you bend the knee instead of them bending it to you, basically.
Below, if you want to sign, there's a difference that could possibly be made here. Here's a great example of how south it can go. Let's stick with Ubisoft, because they had the crew, right? This comes out in 2014, and eventually Ubisoft takes it offline in 2024. Now, when they take it offline, as covered by Game Developer here, Ubisoft was sued for taking the crew offline and duping players. This is where, in 2025, the statement from Ubisoft, in infamy, has come from, which is that you don't own your video games. As covered by Polygon, Ubisoft holds firm in the crew lawsuit.
Of course they would be on
video
it.
Games. And to the surprise...
Polygon, go to hell. Like, aren't y'all... Didn't they degut you or something? Like, and you still out here talking... Yo, shut up.
eyes of many, this was not just clickbait or lip service here. Let's read the actual statement from the legal documentation itself. This is what Ubisoft says. Continuing from the top line, Ubisoft allegedly misled purchasers of its video game The Crew into believing they were purchasing unfettered ownership rights in the game rather than a limited license to access the game. But the reality is that consumers received the benefit of their bargain and were explicitly notified at the time of purchase that they were purchasing a license. In this same statement at the bottom, Ubisoft also claims that the packaging gives you warnings about The Crew being this license, being this thing that you do not own. However, what's really interesting is, as covered by Polygon, they say, replying to Ubisoft's argument that the statute of limitations is up, the plaintiffs responded with their own photos of The Crew's packaging, which states that the activation code for the game doesn't expire until 2099. That's an example of how Ubisoft implied that The Crew would remain playable during this time and long thereafter, per the amended complaint. There was no reason to suggest The Crew would be shut down, the lawyer said, until 2023 when the game was announced to be shut down, so that the statute of limitations is not up. So this is, I think, a perfect example, right? A game gets taken
Caught you, bitch.
offline, kind of comes out of nowhere, and I'm going to be very honest for a moment here. I don't give a single shit about The Crew. I give a shit about the situation, but like, I played at launch, I did a little review on it, I moved on. I'm not like a racing bro out there, but for a lot of people, this is a big deal to them. A lot of people stick with Crew. They did a sequel, they did like Motorsport, they did a lot of different Crew games to my surprise, but yeah, they left behind the original one. So what a lot of people have misunderstood this as is Ubisoft's going to have to put development funds into like an offline mode, or
driving games
servers alive. They're going to have to do
so
something that's going to cost them money to give this game infinite access, and that is where the mistake.
I remember using just driving that, using these for arcades. I've never really bought a driving game.
Mistakes start to kick in here. What would the actual changes potentially look like? I mean, these companies are crafty. We can already tell as much based on the EULAs we just read. So I don't think it's going to bring out this dreamlike quality, substantial change. Maybe some developers will be incentivized to think about offline modes. Sure, that's plausible. But for games like, as brought up in many arguments, World of Warcraft, what happens there? And I think it comes down to terminology. And I hate to be this kind of content creator because normally I'm just like, here are my thoughts. But when I was reading up on the situation, because when it starts to involve legality and that sort of thing, I want to make sure I'm like really taking in what the public opinion is more than I typically do, because I think in this case where it involves representing an initiative, you got to be like laser focused here. So I actually saw this comment on the game developers Reddit thread talking about Stop Killing Games, and I thought this comment in particular really put into frame what could happen from at least a game developer's point of view. Don't know what company this individual works at, if they're just like a part-time indie dev, whatever it may be, but I still thought it was really well said, and I wanted to read it for you all. They said, I'm glad there are other developers here understanding there's quite a bit of nuance in this conversation. Ragebait clips on social media and Reddit's downvote/upvote system make it way too easy to mentally check out and say Pirate Software is completely bad and misrepresented everything and is a corporate shill, or SKG is completely misguided and infeasible. In my opinion, if your online game is relying on a host of microservices, there simply is no server binary to distribute unless it is a very simple dedicated server kind of architecture. So if it's not that, what do you hand players? A bunch of Docker images, screenshots of AWS configurations, and how would any of that be useful without open sourcing the game, which developers should absolutely not be forced to do? But this doesn't mean consumers should be treated like dirt either. In my opinion, the solution would be something like this. If you are producing a live service game that can be rendered completely unplayable, you cannot legally use the word purchase. You must use the word subscribe. There's pause there. I thought this was like the number one reason I wanted to show it. I'm like, yeah, this would wake people up a little bit. Like, you're not buying something. You're subscribing to something. And I think just that naming alone, I think people will still go and support these things, but they go in knowing like subscription service can end whenever. Continuing, they say you must prominently tell subscribers at point of purchase.
Damn, that's how they get you? Damn.
That the service can be taken offline at any time, just like how cigarette manufacturers have to prominently place warnings about lung cancer on all of their products. You must give players 6+ months advance notice of the end of life of a game. You may not accept new subscriptions within that 6-month period. If you do, you are obligated to refund any subscriptions during that period. If you do not notify players of end of life, you are on the hook for refunding any subscriptions in the 12 months prior. Again, I think this makes a lot of sense here. This keeps things where you're sort of in the same pocket of games existing as they are, because these companies aren't going to want to change and bend over for things like these. So they do these sorts of things, but now they have to just be a little more cautious of what that end of life looks like. Lastly, as they wrap up here, you cannot charge anything upfront for accessing the game. An upfront charge would make it seem like a purchase to consumers, and these should not legally be considered purchases. If you want to provide an online-only live service game, you have to figure out a way to do it without charging $60 to $80 on something that can be bricked. Legally forcing developers to engage in any kind of programming solution seems wrong to me, even if the goal is noble, whereas there's ample precedent for restrictions on marketing, advertising, and subscriptions. So yeah, I apologize. I know, I just take it as lazy content when people are just reading other people's takes. It's like, well, what's your take? But sincerely, I read this and I went, this is golden. I thought this was a perfect representation of how things could go without being too idealistic. I know how I think. I get a little idealistic at times. I try to look at the glass half full. I would love it for developers to make these online games and consider offline modes. Again, I feel like this initiative, if it passes and it starts to get the steam that we're hoping it does, could maybe incentivize that type of thinking. I think it'll come down to, as these companies will typically think about these things, what is the most cost effective and what benefits them in the long tail? Does it benefit them to support an offline mode so that the game can still sell years down the line even when they stop paying for servers? Maybe that is beneficial to them. Who knows? But in the case of something like The Crew, where the game can just randomly get ripped offline, I think that is a situation that has happened to all of us at some point down the road where something we care about disappears. I wonder what this could mean for licensed games, right? Like, again, this is where I get idealistic. I'm like, what does this mean for games that were available, like Marvel Ultimate Alliance, and then the license gets pulled away because Activision and Marvel terminate their deal, and these games just are no longer available for me to purchase? I just wonder how deep this thing goes. But a lot of this is targeted at like the kind of live service genre, and admittedly, as many of you know with the content I cover here, it's a genre that I don't play much of. I like my single player games. I like having access to
Me
my
too.
games. And so
Me
I just
too.
thought bringing attention to this was important. Again, the link is in the description down below. It is as simple as just signing a form if that's something that you are interested in doing. I just thought it was important to spread the information, make sure people are aware of it. And again, I just thought...
Yeah, that makes sense. Makes sense. Thank you for doing that, Maddie. I don't necessarily have any commentary right now. Because I need some time for it to marinate, and I'm gonna watch Asmongold's take on it and see if I agree with him or not. But yeah, I don't really have much to say on this. You know, I would say things are what they are, but good on Jake Gamers for kind of fighting back and for signing the petition, which is now at 1.3 million signatures, that's really good. Because you know, developers need to be reminded, like, you know, sometimes you purchase a product and people expect it to be there for a certain amount of time. So, yeah, let me know what you think about this video down in the comments below. Let me know what other gaming videos you want me to react to. Like, subscribe if you can do today, and I will see you guys in the live stream. Take care. Thanks for stopping by.